and viewers of Inside the Numbers, you're going to know this, all right? I think that the Trump presidency is cooked as of right now, okay? I'm going to give you guys, I'm not a pessimist. I keep getting comments like you're pessimistic. I'm not pessimistic. I'm not a pessimist. I'm realistic. I'm a realist. And as far as myself and where I am personally, I'm an eternal optimist. The pendulum of American politics will forever swing back and forth. The question is, how much time in between those swings that's the question. How much time is in between those swings? Because how much of your agenda can you get while you're dominating a generation of politics like we saw throughout the 20th century? This didn't have to happen to Republicans. And I'm going to bring Robert in here right now, but I'm going to continue saying what I'm going to say real quick, Robert. But this didn't have to happen to Republicans. They could have had a coalition, Donald Trump's coalition, not the Republican coalition, because remember, Republicans ran behind Donald Trump, Robert, everywhere in 2024. The Trump coalition could have been turned into a Republican coalition that could have governed this country for 30 years. It could have been very much modeled off of the Roosevelt coalition. The difference, however, between what happened to the Democratic Party back then and what happened to the Republican Party now is that Republicans did not complete the transition. They didn't complete the realignment. 10 years into this movement, they still have not completed that realignment. It's unbelievable. They have allowed interest groups, powerful interest groups that represent tiny, tiny voting minorities of the current coalition for Trump, which, by the way, would have evolved.
Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So today I want to talk about, again, the GOP Civil War and what it means for MAGA. I just played a clip from the best pollster in the country, Richard Barris, and he's saying MAGA is over because of the fact that Trump has not been able to deliver his America First policies for the working people in the country. And instead he's been focused on neocon pet projects like bombing Iran, continuing the Ukraine war, and threatening to invade like Venezuela because of fentanyl, even though the majority of fentanyl that enters the United States doesn't come from Venezuela, it comes from Mexico. So I want to talk about that, but before we get into the details, please remember to subscribe, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Pretty much wherever you get your podcasts, frickin' subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. So this sort of GOP civil war has been going on now it's really been going on ever since Trump got inaugurated the second time. There was almost immediately pressure for Trump to start doing the bidding for Israel. I believe Bibi Netanyahu was the first prime minister or president from a foreign country to visit Trump in the White House. And immediately there was pressure put on Trump to bomb Iran. Okay? And the pressure came from MAGA influencers, quote unquote MAGA influencers, fake MAGA influencers. But people like Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, pretty much everyone on Fox News, people who would go on establishment outlets like Two-Way, pretty much everyone from the Free Press, Barry Weiss's ridiculous outlet. I mean, the fact that I think I saw evaluations that the Free Press was worth like millions and millions of dollars. This little YouTube channel that barely has any videos that has more than like 100,000 views, but somehow it's like a super profitable channel. Don't even get me started on that. But you had this big push by all these influencers that were either MAGA or adjacent to MAGA, talking about how Trump needs to bomb Iran, and that it's actually, according to them, it is MAGA, it is America First to bomb Iran because Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And to be fair, Trump did say during pretty much all three of his presidential campaigns that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That's true. But here's the part where these Israel firsters basically weren't being fully honest is the goal of getting to a conflict with Iran isn't really about getting rid of nuclear weapons. It's about regime change. Israel wants regime change. And you could understand why Israel, from their perspective, wants regime change in Iran. It serves Israel's interests for most of the region to be not stable. It does serve their interest for Iran certainly not to get a nuclear weapon. because Iran funds terrorism and they're sort of a counter-influence in the region to Israel. So Israel's been wanting regime change for years now, and with Trump, they thought they'd had the opportunity. And they manipulated Trump's past comments about not allowing Iran to get a nuclear weapon to goad Trump into bombing Iran. And as we got to the summer, it became more and more obvious that Trump's negotiations with Iran either weren't being done in good faith on the America's part, or it just weren't being successful. So it became more and more obvious as we got into June that Trump was likely to bomb Iran, at least bomb its nuclear facilities. And you had a big effort from the populist side of the GOP movement, people like Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, trying to lobby Trump, convince Trump that bombing Iran was a bad idea because it's not America first. But then you had Trump come out saying all these ridiculous statements saying that, he created the idea of America first, so he gets to dictate what it is, which is just not true factually. The whole America first has been around for decades. Trump did not just come up with it back in 2016. That was bullshit. But Trump does, and also Trump started talking about maybe it'd be good if there was regime change in Iran. It looked really dicey. So Israel then attacks Iran, and we follow, I think, like a week later. Trump bombs Iran's nuclear facilities, but 2 days later, he actually does get a ceasefire. And that actually made a lot of people upset on the pro-Israeli side. They tried to hide it for political purposes to make it seem like this wasn't about regime change and it was just about the nuclear facility. But you could tell there were people who clearly wanted more to be done in Iran. But Trump, to his credit, gets a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. But the damage has already been done. Okay. Millions of working class voters who had never voted Republican until 2024 completely loses their faith in the Trump administration because they think Trump is just a typical Republican now. Here's the problem for the Trump administration. If you're Trump, you can't campaign for basically the last 8 years about the fact that you were not going to start any new wars and that you were the first president in decades not to start a new war, and then fucking start a war as you get into your second term, 6 months into your second term. You can't do that and not expect to have any fallout from that. There was. It's you can't talk about how you're an anti-war president, you're a peacemaker, and then start bombing Iran just for the benefit of Israel. Because Iran has never been a threat to the United States. What, is Iran's going to bomb Nebraska? What? They're going to bomb a bunch of farmers? That's not going to happen. So sort of your typical, the new day swing voter, sort of your millennial or Gen Z, less white, less educated voter that's now the swing voter in the United States, when they saw Trump bomb Iran back in the summer, they were like, okay, we're out. We didn't vote for this. We voted for America first, not for Trump to be bombing countries at the behest of Israel. Okay? And ever since then, and during this whole debate among MAGA about either bombing Iran, not bombing Iran, you had Tucker and Charlie Kirk and even people like Megyn Kelly being criticized by the Israeli first crowd, people like, again, Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, Laura Loomer, people at The Blaze. And they ended up being right in the sense that it did not lead to a larger conflict with Iran. But again, the damage has already been done. You can't bomb Iran. They can't do a preemptive strike when Iran hasn't attacked us. Everyone knew Trump did it for Israel. Okay. And so now people who have always been critical of Israel have been seemingly proved right. People like Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes is now more popular than ever because of the Iran strike. Let's not make any mistake about it. I mean, Nick Fuentes, when Trump bombed Iran, Nick Fuentes did a huge live stream that got over 1 million views. He went viral everywhere because he had been predicting this for years, that the U.S. would do the bidding of Israel and bomb Iran. So Fuentes is as popular as ever. So Tucker, as a journalist and just someone who's curious about different ideas and different people, has Fuentes on to talk to him. Okay, he talks to Fuentes. And because Tucker Carlson had the audacity to have a conversation with Nick Fuentes, the Israel First neocons decided to use this as an opportunity to not only go after Tucker, but try to create the pretext for the Republican Party to go back to being the full-blown neocon party it was pre-Trump. Because make no mistake about this, people like Ben Shapiro, people like Mark Levin, they don't like J.D. Vance. Because they view J.D. Vance as almost more MAGA than Trump. Trump's sort of malleable. Trump doesn't have a core ideology, if we're being, I think, honest at this point. It's sort of undeniable. Even if you like Trump, I think you got to be honest about that. But J.D. Vance does. J.D. Vance is a true believer in non-interventionism. He's wrote about it eloquently. He served. He's a veteran. He understands the horror of war. He doesn't believe in getting into these conflicts. So a lot of what's going on now in this MAGA civil war is sort of just, we're sort of in the preseason for what the 2028 Republican primary is going to be. And sort of what the direction of the Republican Party is post-Trump. But I don't think people in the neocon wing of the party understand is by Trump doing the bidding of Israel, that has really hurt the Republican Party. So it doesn't matter who's going to be the standard bearer in 28. If trends continue the way they are, Republicans have no chance of winning the White House in 28. I mean, last Tuesday was just a warning sign of things to come. People are not happy with the current administration because they think the current administration is more concerned about Israel and other countries like Ukraine than they are fixing inflation, fixing the housing market, fixing the shitty job market. I mean, then you have Trump going on Laura Ingram's show this past week and talking about there's no problem with the economy, that prices are down everywhere, which is just not true. I mean, Trump is just gaslighting the public, and it makes people really angry. So make no mistake about this, the White House is in some trouble. The Republican Party they're in a pickle. And this MAGA civil war isn't really about Tucker or Fuentes. What it's really about is the future of the Republican Party. And again, what I don't think people understand is the Republican Party has no future if the Trump administration continues down the road of not focusing on domestic issues, but focusing on foreign policy, focusing on Israel, focusing on continually to fund the Ukraine war, and focusing on potentially invading Venezuela for a non-issue that doesn't really exist. So that's what's really going on. So the question is MAGA really over? At this point, it sort of is, unless Trump changes course. Now, the good news about Trump is he's very good at changing course when he needs to. But I'm not that optimistic. But we'll see. You never know. Like I said, Trump is pretty good at switching on a dime when he feels like it's politically advantageous for him. But he's just also very fucking stubborn. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. But make no mistake about it, this is what the GOP civil war is about. It's not about anti-Semitism. It's not about the Jews. It's not about Tucker Carlson. It's not about Nick Fuentes. It's about the future of the Republican Party going forward. And we have to make sure that the anti-war populist part of the Republican Party is the winner. Unfortunately, like I said, if the Trump administration continues going down the road it's going, it's not going to matter because Republicans will be destroyed no matter which part of the wing ends up winning this civil war. So the second topic I want to talk about is the Epstein files. Democrats are again playing political games, which is disgusting if you consider the context of the Epstein files. They're continually trying to create the impression that Donald Trump's a pedophile. It's fucking gross. If you actually care about sex trafficking, child victims, you shouldn't be going around pretending that the President of the United States is a pedophile without any real evidence. But yesterday, a bunch of emails came out because Democrats, through the Republican House investigation, by the way, were able to get emails and documents from the Epstein estate. And what the House Democrats did yesterday was release some of these documents and emails, but they redacted some information to make Trump basically look guilty. And what I mean by that is there's this woman named Virginia Roberts who has claimed that she's been a victim of Epstein for over 15 years. I believe she recently passed away, but over the last 15 years, she'd been saying that she'd been victimized by Epstein. The problem is, though, almost all of her statements, there's a lot of evidence that she's been lying, that she made up facts, that she claimed she was a victim from different high-profile individuals, and there's been no proof that that actually happened. I mean, this woman was basically a grifter. And the Democrats knew that, so what they did was, in some of these emails, when she was listed, they redacted her name and just put the word victim as a way to quote-unquote protect her, as if she was an unknown potential victim. But she was an unknown. She's been public about her accusations for years. The Democrats did that to make it seem like, oh, there's all these new victims coming out that not just Epstein might have victimized, but even Donald Trump might have victimized. It's fucking gross. And then they released more emails of Epstein claiming that he's had all these meetings with Donald Trump. And then you have idiots like Kyle Kulinski going on Twitter acting as if that we have to take all these accusations on face value. I don't know. Just because Epstein claims he had dinner, there's no evidence Epstein had dinner with Trump when he was the president back in 2017 or 2019, as Epstein allegedly claimed he did. What, you don't think Epstein would have lied about that? Epstein loved the idea of him having all this influence. You think Epstein was above lying about having different connections with the president of the United States? I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, Trump knew Epstein. There's video of them together partying. But this attempt by the Democrats to smear Trump as a pedophile is really fucking gross, especially when you consider the fact that Trump was almost killed over a year ago because of more Democrat lies. So I just think it's really fucked up for the Democrats to be pretending that there's all this evidence that Trump's a pedophile. There's no evidence that Trump's a pedophile. I'm sorry, there's just not. He's maybe mistreated some women. He's cheated on his wives. He shouldn't have done that. But this whole thing is, this whole Epstein thing, it really dismissed. There is some there to Epstein, but trying to finagle Trump into it, it really sort of makes the whole thing look like a hoax, as Trump says. I mean, the more and more Democrats act this way, the more and more Trump looks valid in calling it a Democrat hoax. The other thing, it should be noted that this Virginia woman, she had also testified prior that Trump had never done anything to her. Like, she was asked, did Trump ever do anything inappropriate to you? And she had made it clear that Trump didn't. Again, that's why it makes what the Democrats did so disgusting, for them to redact your name, to make it look like this was a new potential victim. It just shows how sleazy the Democrat Party is. For all my frustrations with the Republican Party, the Democrat Party is fucking disgusting. And we should not forget that, folks. Now, that being said, even though this is becoming more and more an actual Democrat hoax, the Trump administration has not handled the Epstein stuff well at all. I mean, we should also keep that in mind. Some of this political fallback that's coming from the Epstein files is the Trump administration's their own fault. That's another reason why a lot of the public has lost faith in the Trump administration, is because of their handling of the Epstein files. You had fucking Pam Bondi saying that she had the Epstein files on her desk, and then like 2 days later, she's like, oh, they don't exist. I had them on my desk, but they didn't exist, so sorry, folks, nothing to see here. That's fucking crazy for you to say that. I mean, in all fairness, like, when people see that, they're like, that's a little fishy. You can't say you have the Epstein files on your desk, and then 2 days later, it'd be like, oh, they don't exist. It's like, what? That's insane. So the Trump administration has not handled this well. And Trump's not handled it the best either, but it's like, he has a point. This has become more and more Democrat hoax. There's been no credible accusations from anyone, not just related to Epstein, but anywhere, that Trump has sexually abused children. that to be transparent and to be fair, there have been accusations that Trump has sexually assaulted grown women. Most of those accusations seem bullshit, but there was a civil trial, and Trump did lose the civil trial. So even though I think that woman's kind of kooky, there is that. But in terms of the Epstein stuff, none of that stuff is credible. It's just not. And again, considering Trump's already been the victim of 2 attempted assassination attempts, he's been shot. The fact that Democrats want to keep pouring more and more gasoline on the anti-Trump fervor and implying he's a pedophile, yeah, I think that's really fucking gross. So, look, is it possible the Republicans in the White House and in the Congress they're not gung-ho on releasing all the Epstein stuff because maybe he had a relationship with Israel? Obviously that's possible given, the Republican Party seems to love Israel, and it does seem like Ghislaine Maxwell's father certainly had connections to Mossad. So if anything, that may be why the Trump administration's been hesitant to really do a deep dive into the Epstein files, but it's not because Trump's going to be implicated as a pedophile. There's no credible evidence of that. And it's just shit like this is why I can never vote for the Democrats. So anyway, there's no evidence that Trump's a pedophile. The Epstein stuff is becoming more and more a hoax. That doesn't mean there's no there to this whole idea of maybe there being a blackmail operation, maybe run by Mossad or the U.S. CIA. It's possible, but we're not going to get a serious investigation from the Democrats, that's for sure. And the Republicans maybe not either because of the potential ties to Israel. But in terms of Trump himself, there's no evidence he's a pedophile, and the Democrats need to stop pretending like there is, or he's going to get Trump shot a third time. So I think that's it for today, folks. Thanks for listening. Again, please remember to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. I really appreciate it. We'll be back on Saturday for the weekly wrap. I hope you've enjoyed the format from last week. So we're going to keep doing it. You seem to like it. A lot of good viewers from it on all the platforms. So we're going to keep doing it. Anyway, folks, I'll see you Saturday. Bye-bye.